Hello, everyone. So here we have a very short clip, a 1-minute clip of Justin Trudeau giving a message to young millennial Canadians. It's titled Canada Housing Crisis. Watch Justin Trudeau's message to millennials. And I'll interject a few times throughout the video to show how Justin Trudeau can't just address the issue. He has to constantly say how it's not his or his government's fault at all and constantly make excuses to why this is happening, why we have such a major housing problem in Canada. And I'm not saying it's just Trudeau's or the Liberal government's fault how this is all happening. That's clearly true. But you're the leader. You're supposed to be responsible for this, and you're supposed to take some accountability at least to get the country back on track from an affordability standpoint.
Canadians, I want to say something. You've had 2 crucial years of adulthood dramatically interrupted by COVID, and then
So, okay, fair. COVID certainly made the housing crisis and the affordability crisis worse. But some of that blame should be at the hands of Trudeau's government as to why COVID has made life in Canada more expensive. Canada had one of the longest and most restrictive COVID lockdowns on earth. I'm sure most Canadians would have been fine with some lockdown and quarantine at the very beginning of the pandemic. But once we realized who the vulnerable populations were, resources should have went to them with regard to keeping them safe, and young, healthy Canadians should not have been locked down for 2 full years. This was a serious lack of leadership. And by the way, Trudeau himself was fine with breaking his own government's rules to protest for Black Lives Matter, and also, he literally called an unnecessary federal election right in the middle of on-again, off-again COVID lockdowns because he thought he was going to win a majority. So, as much of Canada remained locked down, or under varying levels of restrictions, people took to the polls anyway in September of 2021.
interrupted by COVID, and then you were hit by global inflation and increased interest rates. These events upended your educations, your first jobs, your early years of building a career and a network. So we've been working hard to make sure that our economy.
So on this point, it is certainly debatable to what degree the Canadian government is responsible for inflation within Canada. Some will argue the government is very responsible, but Canada has not been the only government on earth who has become addicted to printing money. So to what degree the Canadian government is responsible for inflation, I don't know. But what is not debatable is that the Bank of Canada and Canada's interest rates generally are actually now much closer to their historical averages than they were during the majority of the Trudeau government's term, or the 8 years they've been in office. Using this as a justification for why Canada is not affordable for young people makes no sense whatsoever. You are the leader of our country, and your government has been in power for 8 years. Interest rates reverting back to the mean should not be used as an excuse to explain to young people why things are so expensive. It cannot and should not be assumed by anybody that interest rates were going to stay near zero forever. And again, his point at the end about building a career and a network. Young people should not have been locked down to the degree they were and for as long as they were. And another thing which could have gotten young people back to a normal work life sooner is that much of the pandemic ending in Canada was always framed around getting everybody vaccinated. I realize the conversation around vaccines has since changed a bit, but our vaccine procurement was slow relative to other countries. Even with the USA right beside us and being our largest trading partner, it still took nearly a full year to get enough vaccines here for everyone.
We've been working hard to make sure that our economy has great jobs for you. We've eliminated interest on loans for your education. We're helping you save up to buy a home, but we know there's lots more to do. We owe it to you to take action so you can fully benefit from the promise of Canada, so you can succeed and access all the opportunities that generations before you had, so that you can have both a healthy economy and a healthy environment in strong, vibrant communities long into the future. As a team, this is one of our top priorities.
And so that is the end of his message. The final point I will make is that what is the point of bringing up the environment here? It certainly seems like he is just throwing that in there because he thinks his government has a good record on that, or it's just some subtle virtue signal. The housing and affordability crisis in Canada is an absolute emergency especially for young people. 1 in 10 people in Toronto are using food banks. The average cost of a home nationwide is over $650,000. The affordability crisis is spreading everywhere in Canada as Canadians are scrambling to find somewhere to live. Alberta and Atlantic Canada have recently seen massive spikes in home and rent prices. And the leader of our country cannot help himself in a speech that is 1 minute and 6 seconds long to bring up the environment. This is a totally separate issue. It is certainly a separate issue for the majority of young Canadians who are struggling to figure out how they're ever going to own a home. Why bring up the environment here? Just address the issue of affordability. Canada needs to fix this issue, or there will be an entire generation of Canadians who could not afford to do anything besides wasting their life away scrolling on Instagram and TikTok.